Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we're easing into the grimy, smoke-filled world of a Depression-era boxer. A world where every meal was a victory and every fistfight was a lesson in survival. You're not just watching the past, you're living it. You're shivering on a cold concrete floor in a back alley, the smell of damp brick and refuse in your nose, your stomach a hollow, aching drum. The world outside your grimy window is a canvas of grey. Grey skies, grey buildings, grey faces. And you, well, you're just another shade of grey. A ghost drifting through the forgotten streets of a city that has no time for ghosts. It's a harsh reality, and you probably won't survive it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments below, and tell me what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a kid, maybe 10 years old, and you're learning to fight not because you want to, but because you have to. Your knuckles are scraped, your knees are scabby, and you're navigating a labyrinth of back alleys and abandoned lots. The year is 1932, and the Great Depression has squeezed the life out of your city. You don't know the phrase, economic downturn, but you know what it feels like. It feels like a gnawing emptiness in your belly that never ever goes away. You're not fighting for glory or a championship belt. You're fighting for a crust of bread, a half-eaten apple someone tossed into the gutter, a few pennies to buy a bowl of watery soup from the breadline. The streets are your school, and desperation is your teacher. You learn the hard lessons fast. The bigger boys who want to steal your shoes, the men who lurk in the shadows, the scuffles over a discarded newspaper you could use to stuff in your coat for warmth. You quickly figure out that a swift jab to the nose is more effective than a clumsy haymaker, and a low, quick punch to the gut can drop a man twice your size. This is not a sport. It's a grim ballet of survival. Your older brother, a wiry, silent kid who's a few years ahead of you, shows you a few tricks. He teaches you to keep your hands up, to move your feet, to absorb a blow instead of trying to stop it head on. He calls it rolling with the punch. Historians still argue whether these survivalist fighting styles, born in the desperation of the Depression, directly influenced the more fluid, evasive techniques that became popular in professional boxing later on. You don't care about history, though. You just care about getting home with something, anything for your mum and little sister. One afternoon, you stumble upon something that changes everything. Tucked away on a side street, half hidden by a brick wall, is a dusty old building with a sign that reads Gleason's Gym. The door is propped open, and the air smells of old leather, sweat, and liniment. A smell that will one day feel like home. Inside, you see men of all shapes and sizes, their bare chests glistening under a single bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Their jumping rope, hitting heavy bags and sparring in the ring. The rhythmic thud of a fist on leather is the sweetest music you've ever heard. You don't know it yet, but this is your future. This is your escape. You start hanging around outside the gym, just watching. The owner, a grizzled old man named Mickey with a cauliflower ear and a face that looks like a crumpled paper bag, eventually takes notice. He sees you, a skinny kid with fire in his eyes, and he tosses you a couple of jobs, sweeping the floor, wiping down the heavy bags, maybe even mopping up the blood that sometimes pools in the corners of the ring. It's a dirty job, but it comes with a reward. Leftover sandwiches from the fighters' lunches, sometimes even a whole untouched bottle of milk. A mainstream historical fact you're living right now is that the boxing gyms of the 1930s often doubled as de facto community centres for the destitute, providing a safe space and a little bit of food for kids who had nowhere else to go. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some of the more resourceful gym owners would actually sell used sparring gloves to local charities, touting them as good for keeping a strong grip on life, a clever bit of marketing for a grim product. The more you watch, the more you learn. You memorise the stances, the footwork, the way a boxer's body shifts just before a hook. You practice in the privacy of your shared room, throwing phantom punches at the air, shadow boxing in front of a cracked piece of glass you found in an abandoned lot. You learn to make your own training weights by tying rocks in old rags and holding them as you work your arms. Your older brother laughs, but it's a tired laugh, not a mean one. He knows what you're doing. He knows this isn't a game. Mickey eventually lets you get in on a few of the sparring sessions. You're small, but you're quick, and you have that desperate hunger that the other kids, the ones with full bellies and new shoes, just don't have. You get knocked down, a lot. Your nose gets broken, your lip gets split, and your ribs ache with a dull, throbbing pain, but you get back up every single time. One day, a veteran boxer, a guy named Knuckles Johnson who's on his way out of the sport, pulls you aside. He's got scars all over his face and a permanent tremor in his hands. He looks at you with a kind of weary sadness, a sadness you're only just beginning to understand. "Kid," he rasps, his voice like gravel, "you got heart." But that ain't enough. You gotta be smart. You gotta know when to hit, but more important, you gotta know when to not get hit. It's the best advice you've ever received, and it will be a lesson you'll be learning for the rest of your life. The gym becomes your second home, a sanctuary from the relentless cold and the constant hunger. You spend every waking moment there, sweeping floors, running errands, and soaking up every piece of boxing knowledge you can. You're not just a kid anymore, you're an apprentice, a sponge, a desperate vessel waiting to be filled. You see the broken dreams and shattered lives that litter the gym floor, the boxers who lost their way, who drank too much, who took one too many punches. But you also see the successes, the guys who made it, who got a big fight and came back with a new suit and a roll of bills. You tell yourself that's going to be you. That's your ticket out of this grey world. You're not just fighting to eat anymore, you're fighting for a future where you can buy your mum a warm coat and your little sister a new dress, a future where the hollow drum in your stomach is finally silenced. The rhythm of the gym becomes the rhythm of your life. The thwack of the speed bag, the low rumble of a heavy bag swinging on its chain, the sharp percussive sounds of leather on flesh. It's a language you're beginning to understand, a vocabulary of pain and resilience. You're in your mid-teens now, lanky and all elbows and knees, but you've got something the other kids don't, a desperate, unyielding fire in your gut. Mickey, the gym owner, sees it. He sees the way you flinch less with each punch, the way you get back up even when your vision is swimming and your ears are ringing. He sees a raw, unpolished something that he knows he can mould. One chilly evening, as you're sweeping up sawdust and old tape, he motions you over. His voice is a low growl like a distant storm. "Kid," he says, not looking at you, but at a frayed poster on the wall, "there's a smoker down at the Elks Lodge next week. They need a warm body for the prelims. $5 if you make it through all 3 rounds. $5. The words hang in the air like a holy promise. $5 could buy a week's worth of food for your family, maybe even a new pair of shoes for your little sister. The thought of it, the simple, unbelievable weight of it makes your chest feel tight. You nod, unable to speak. That's all Mickey needs. He just grunts and walks away, leaving you to stare at the poster of a grim-faced boxer, a stranger whose life and livelihood depended on this very same choice. This is your first step into the world of amateur boxing, a world built on the back of boys who needed the money more than they valued their own well-being. A mainstream historical fact from this era is that smokers, or amateur bouts, were a crucial part of the fight game's ecosystem. They were informal, often unsanctioned fights in clubs, lodges and even basements, serving as a proving ground for young talent and a source of cheap entertainment. The week leading up to the fight is a blur of nervous energy. You can barely eat, and every shadow on the wall looks like a heavyweight contender. You practice with a frantic, almost manic energy. Mickey throws you into the ring with guys twice your weight, just to see what you're made of. You take a beating, a truly magnificent one. You're pummeled and pushed around, but you stay on your feet. You remember the old boxer Knuckles advice from before. Know when to not get hit. You try to move, to dodge, to stay just out of reach, even as you're taking shots to the gut that leave you gasping for air. One night, Mickey gets a little exasperated. "You fight like a scared rabbit," he yells, his voice echoing in the empty gym. You just stand there panting and you think, well, I am a scared rabbit. And then you realise, a quirky tidbit of boxing psychology, that fighting from a place of fear can sometimes make you more agile and defensive than fighting from a place of bravado. Fear makes you quick, makes you pay attention, makes you remember to protect your soft, fragile head. The night of the fight, you walk into a large smoke-filled room at the Elks Lodge. The air is thick with cigar smoke and the scent of cheap beer. A makeshift ring is set up in the centre, ropes sagging a little, the canvas stained with what you hope is just sweat. The crowd is a mix of grizzled old men, loud-mouthed gamblers, and a few women in fancy hats. They're all talking, laughing, and shouting. Their voices a dull roar in your ears. Your opponent is a kid named Frank. He's a little older, a little bigger, and he's got a confident swagger that you instantly hate. He looks like he's done this 100 times. You, meanwhile, feel like your legs are made of jello. You don't have a proper corner man. Mickey just points to the stool and says, "Sit. Don't fall down." The bell rings, and it's a shock to your system. Everything you practiced seems to vanish. You're clumsy. Your feet feel glued to the floor and your punches are wild, clumsy swings. Frank, on the other hand, is a machine. He's got a slick left jab that keeps you off balance, and he's moving with a grace you've only seen in the older, more experienced guys at the gym. He hits you in the nose, a clean, sharp shot that makes your eyes water. Your lip splits. A warm, metallic taste fills your mouth. For a moment you feel a wave of sheer terror. You want to run, to just climb out of the ring and disappear. But then you look at the crowd, at the men placing bets, at the faces waiting for you to fail, and you think of your family. You think of that $5, and that's when you remember what Mickey said. Don't fall down. You stop swinging wildly. You start to move, to circle. You use your long, bony arms to keep him at a distance. You duck and weave, just like you practiced in your small room. Frank lands more punches, but they don't have the same force. You're not trying to win, you're just trying to survive. It's a grueling 3 rounds. You get hit in the gut so hard you feel like you're going to throw up. You take a shot to the ear that makes you dizzy, but you don't fall. You just keep moving, keep your guard up, keep your focus on your feet. You throw a few punches of your own, mostly jabs, not for damage, but just to keep him from getting too comfortable. One of them, a lucky shot that you barely even remember throwing, connects with his nose and you see him wince. It's a small victory, but it's enough to give you a jolt of adrenaline, a rush you've never felt before. The final bell rings, and you and Frank are both panting, sweaty messes. You didn't win, not really. The referee raises Frank's hand and the crowd gives a smattering of applause. You feel a strange mix of disappointment and relief. You didn't win, but you didn't get knocked out. You stayed on your feet. You look at Frank, and he nods at you, a sign of respect. You know, historians still debate whether the amateur boxing system of the 1930s was a viable path to success, or just a mechanism for exploitation, with many young fighters getting hurt for minimal pay. You're not thinking about that, though. You're thinking about the $5. Mickey is waiting for you outside the ring. He hands you a $5 bill. It's crumpled and a little damp, but it feels like the weight of the world in your palm. "You got heart, kid," he says, with a gruffness that you're beginning to recognize as his version of praise. You ain't much of a fighter, not yet, but you got heart. You walk out of the Elks Lodge into the cool night air, the $5 bill clutched in your hand. Your body aches, your head throbs, and you can feel the split in your lip with your tongue. But you also feel something else, a new kind of satisfaction. You did it. You survived, and you're $5 closer to putting food on the table. You're no longer just a kid fighting for scraps. You're an amateur boxer, and the grind has just begun. The roar of the crowd, the stinging feeling of a punch, the taste of your own blood, it's all part of the deal now. The $5 you earned from your first fight felt like a king's ransom, but it was just a taste, a small sip of a very bitter drink. You're now a permanent fixture at Gleason's gym. The smell of sweat and leather has become your perfume, the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of the heavy bag your lullaby. Your old life of scrounging for food in alleys seems distant now, replaced by the relentless, monotonous grind of gym life. Your days are a blur of physical labour and punishment. You jump rope until your calves burn, the double Dutch technique a blur of speed and precision. You do sit-ups and push-ups until your muscles scream in protest. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of grueling high-volume calisthenics, rather than fancy equipment, was the foundation of boxing training in the 1930s. There was no such thing as a strength and conditioning coach back then. Your conditioning came from sheer, brutal repetition. You live and breathe the gym. You're not just a fighter, you're part of the furniture. You help Mickey with the little things, sweeping, mopping, wrapping the hands of the more experienced fighters. You watch their every move, a quiet observer soaking up knowledge. You see a veteran fighter named Frankie, the Fizzer, who has a jab so fast it's like a snake strike. He's all smiles outside the ring, but in the ring he's a cold, calculating machine. You watch how he feints, how he uses his feet to create angles, how he holds his gloves just so, a subtle shift that tells him everything about his opponent's intentions. Another guy, a hulking heavyweight named Butch, teaches you how to roll your shoulders to absorb a punch and how to counter with a quick hook. You get hit. A lot. Your body is a constant canvas of bruises and aches. A perpetually black eye becomes a common feature of your face. You get hit in the gut so many times you feel like you have a permanent stomachache. But with every blow, you learn a lesson. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this era is the bizarre assortment of health tonics and performance-enhancing remedies fighters would swear by. You see one fighter, a small, quick guy, who drinks a concoction of raw eggs and whiskey before every sparring session, convinced it gives him the legs of a gazelle and the punch of a mule. Another guy insists on stuffing a raw potato in his shoe to draw out the impurities from his feet. You just shake your head and stick to water, but you're constantly amazed by the strange rituals people will adopt in the desperate hope of an edge. You move from the amateur smokers to slightly more formal, still unpaid bouts. These fights take place in bigger halls, with more people and more at stake. You're still not getting paid, not in cash, but in prestige, in the simple currency of getting noticed. You're beginning to develop your own style, a defensive, tactical approach forged from a place of perpetual underdog status. You're not a brawler, you're too small for that. You're a mover, a boxer who relies on speed and footwork to stay out of trouble and pick his spots. It's a style born not out of choice, but out of necessity. It's the style of a kid who learned that taking a punch means you might not get to eat tomorrow. You've had a couple of clean wins, a few draws and a few losses where you were outclassed but not knocked down. Your record is nothing to write home about, but you're consistent. You're a problem. Mickey, your gruff mentor, starts spending more time with you. He shows you how to wrap your hands properly, with tape and gauze, a ritual that feels like a ceremony. He teaches you how to work the body, a grinding, attritional style of fighting that saps an opponent's energy. He's not a man of many words, but when he speaks, you listen. One afternoon, he's holding the focus mitts for you. He's a blur of motion, a master of the sweet science. You throw a jab, a hook, and a cross, and he catches each one with a sharp pop, a sound that's as clean and precise as a whip crack. "You gotta use your legs, kid," he grunts. "You're all arm. Your legs are the engine." He makes you practice footwork for an hour, just moving, weaving, and pivoting without throwing a single punch. You're exhausted, but you're also learning. You're becoming a fighter, not just a puncher. The brutal reality of the sport becomes more and more apparent. You see guys come in with dreams in their eyes, only to have them extinguished by a single punch. You see a kid named Danny, a real firecracker in the ring, get knocked out cold in a sparring session. He's out for a full minute, and when he finally comes to, his eyes are wide and glassy. He never comes back to the gym. The silent understanding that hangs in the air is that he's gone for good, another casualty of the game. Historians still argue whether the lack of regulations and medical oversight in the 1930s fight scene contributed to the tragic rise of a condition known as punch-drunk syndrome, or if it was simply a matter of the inherent dangers of the sport itself. You don't have time to debate. You just have to be careful. You learn to protect your head, to duck and roll, to keep your chin tucked. You learn to be smart. You learn to be lucky. There's a moment of grim humour one afternoon. You're helping Mickey clean out a closet, and you find a beat-up old sign that reads Gleason School of Self-Defense and Elocution. You look at Mickey with a raised eyebrow. He just grunts. "Some dame wanted me to teach her how to talk proper," he says, a rare smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Lasted one lesson. Kept calling me Mr. Gleason. Broke her nose with a stray jab. That was the end of the elocution." You both share a quiet laugh, a moment of shared humanity in the gritty, merciless world of the gym. You're not just fighting anymore, you're living. The gym is your world, and the men in it are your makeshift family. You trust them, you learn from them, and you see the best and worst in them. The grimy, worn-out gym is more than just a place to train. It's a crucible, a forge where you're being hammered and moulded into something new, something tougher. The hunger that drove you in the beginning is still there, but it's different now. It's not just for food, it's for a better life. It's for a way out. And you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that the only way out is through the ropes of that ring. Your time as an amateur is drawing to a close. You can feel it in the way Mickey looks at you, in the way the other fighters treat you. The next bell you hear won't be for a smoker. It'll be for your first professional fight. The day of your first professional fight arrives with a slow, heavy dread that sits in your stomach like a rock. The amateur smokers were a proving ground, a rehearsal for this. This is the real thing. This is for keeps. This is a game where the consequences are measured not just in pride, but in dollars and cents, in a career, and in your very ability to walk straight. The fight is at a small, dingy arena on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the scent of stale beer and desperation hangs heavy in the air. Mickey has arranged it all. He tells you your opponent is a kid named Sailor Smith, a guy with a few pro fights under his belt, but nothing spectacular. He's a brawler, Mickey says, as he tapes your hands. He's going to come at you like a freight train. You stick and move, you hear me? You stay on your feet, and you stay away from his right hand. The pre-fight rituals are a blur. You're led into a cramped, dusty locker room that smells of liniment and old wood. You sit on a splintery bench trying to calm the frantic, buzzing energy in your chest. You've never felt this kind of fear before, a deep, chilling kind of fear that makes your hands shake. You think back to your first amateur fight, a long time ago in a smoky lodge, and you realise that fear was just a prelude. That was the opening act. This is the main event. A mainstream historical fact is that professional boxers in the 1930s often fought for a tiny fraction of the ticket sales, with most of the money going to the promoters and managers. For a young fighter like you, a win might mean $20 if you were lucky, and a loss might mean a trip to the hospital and a few days of no income. The stakes are impossibly high. Mickey finishes wrapping your hands, a precise, methodical process that has always felt calming. He looks at you, his eyes crinkling in a way you haven't seen before. "You ready, kid?" he asks. And it's not a question of readiness, but a question of resolve. You nod and he slaps you on the back, a surprisingly gentle gesture. You put on the worn leather gloves, the laces pulled tight by Mickey. They feel heavy, like two weights attached to your wrists. You walk through a narrow corridor toward the ring, and the roar of the crowd hits you like a physical force. It's not the casual buzz of the amateur smokers. It's a living, breathing monster, a cacophony of shouts, cheers, and boos. The lights are blinding, a harsh spotlight that makes everything else disappear. The ring looks impossibly large and incredibly small at the same time. You can see your opponent, Sailor Smith, in the opposite corner. He's got a sailor's tattoo on his arm, a grim smile on his face, and a look in his eyes that says he's here to take something from you. The referee gives the instructions, but you don't hear him. You're focused on your opponent, on the canvas beneath your feet, on the bell hanging above your head. The bell rings, a sharp metallic sound that slices through the air, and then there is only the fight. Sailor Smith comes at you exactly like Mickey said he would, like a freight train. He's all power, all forward momentum, swinging wild haymakers and trying to end it early. You remember your training, all those hours spent in the gym, and you move, you dance, you use your feet to stay just out of reach, letting his wild punches whiz past your head, feeling the wind from them. You feel like a ghost, a phantom that he can't quite touch. He's getting frustrated. You can see it in his eyes, in the way his jaw clenches. This is where your defensive style pays off. You're not fighting to knock him out, you're fighting to tire him out. You pepper him with quick jabs, not for power, but to keep him honest, to remind him you're still there. But then he lands one. A lucky shot. A right hand that catches you on the side of the head. Your vision swims and a hot metallic pain explodes behind your temple. You hear a ringing in your ears that drowns out the crowd. Your knees buckle, and for a terrifying second, you think you're going down. You see a flash of a memory. Your mum, her tired face, your sister's hopeful eyes. You remember why you're here. You remember the hungry knot in your stomach, and you remember Mickey's voice. Don't fall down. You cling to the ropes, your head throbbing, and you move away. You use your long arms to clinch, to tie him up, to give yourself a few seconds to clear your head. He pushes you away, and you're still standing, but barely. A quirky or fringe tidbit of boxing law is the practice of staving off, a knockout with sheer willpower, a kind of mental trick that supposedly allows you to absorb more punishment. You don't know if it's real, but you're doing it anyway, fighting through the pain and the dizziness. You're a mess, but you're still in the fight. The rest of the first round is a lesson in survival. You duck, you weave, you hold, and you move. You land a few jabs, a hook to the body, and you can feel his power starting to wane. He's getting sloppy, his punches slower and less precise. You're still scared, but the fear is different now. It's not a panic. It's a focus. It's an engine that's driving you forward. By the third round, you've found your rhythm. Sailor Smith is gassed. He's throwing wild, telegraphed punches that you can see coming a mile away. You're still bruised and battered, but you're in control. You land a clean uppercut that snaps his head back. You follow with a quick 1-2 combination to the head, and you can see the light go out of his eyes. He stumbles, and the referee steps in, giving him a standing 8 count. He just nods, glassy-eyed, and motions for the fight to continue. You don't take it easy on him. You land another clean combination, a flurry of punches that sends him to the canvas. The crowd roars. The referee counts to 10. It's over. You've won. Your first professional fight, and you won by knockout. You stand in the centre of the ring, your arms hanging loose at your sides, your chest heaving. You can't feel the pain. Not yet. You just feel the adrenaline and a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. Mickey climbs into the ring, his face a rare mixture of pride and something you can't quite name. He raises your hand. The crowd is on its feet, a mix of cheers and shouts. You look at your opponent still on the canvas, and you feel a flicker of something close to pity. He's just a kid like you, fighting for his own reasons. Historians still argue whether the brutal nature of 1930s professional boxing, with its lack of safety regulations and emphasis on knockouts, created a generation of highly resilient fighters or simply a generation of broken men. You don't know the answer. All you know is you survived. Later, in the locker room, Mickey hands you a roll of bills. It's more money than you've ever seen in your life. You look at the money, then at your bruised knuckles and your swollen eye. The taste of victory is sweet, but it's mixed with the metallic taste of blood and the bitter reality of the price you paid. You're a professional now. This is your life. The road ahead is long, and you have to keep walking it, one punch at a time. The hunger is still there, but it's no longer a gnawing emptiness in your stomach. It's a burning ambition in your soul, an unquenchable desire to keep fighting, to keep winning, to build a future out of nothing. The professional world, you quickly learn, is a different kind of beast. It's less about simple survival, and more about the intricate, often bizarre dance of climbing a ladder you can't even see. You're not just a fighter anymore, you're a commodity. Your manager, a greasy-haired man named Frankie, who's an acquaintance of Mickey's, takes over. Frankie knows everybody and a lot of things you'd rather not know. He gets you fights, small-time bouts in every city from here to Cleveland. The venues are all the same, dusty halls, flickering lights, and a crowd that's a mix of true believers and cynical gamblers. Your opponents are a parade of eccentrics and oddballs. There's the dancing Dan Murphy, who never stops moving, not even between rounds. There's the Clipper Collins, who only throws left hooks and is convinced his fists are blessed by a saint. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that many of these fighters, unable to afford proper training facilities, would practice in public parks, using trees for heavy bags and their own shadows for sparring partners, leading to a strange sort of folk boxing tradition. You're a machine now. You fight once, sometimes twice a month. The fights blend into a single, exhausting memory of pain and triumph. You're winning more than you're losing. Your style, that defensive, tactical approach born of desperation, is now becoming your signature. You're not a knockout artist, but you're smart. You frustrate your opponents. You wear them down. You land 1,000 small punches that feel like 1,000 little cuts. You're getting noticed. The local sports pages start to print your name, usually a small line at the bottom of the page that reads, "And the up-and-coming, your name, defeated his opponent by a unanimous decision." It's a start. The money is better, but it's still not a fortune. Most of it goes to Frankie, to Mickey, and to your training expenses. What's left you send home? A steady stream of crumpled bills that you hope will keep the wolf from the door a little longer. You're a provider now, but you're also a prisoner. Your life is an endless loop of training, fighting, and recovering. You don't have time for friends, for a girl, for anything but the next fight. Historians still argue whether the grueling fight schedules of the 1930s, with boxers fighting dozens of times a year, were a necessary evil for a fighter to make a name for himself, or a form of sanctioned exploitation by a predatory system. You don't have to wonder. You just have to endure. Your body is a testament to this grind. Your knuckles are permanently swollen. Your hands are a roadmap of old breaks and fractures. The bridge of your nose is a little crooked, a permanent souvenir from a long-forgotten fight. You have a constant ache in your ribs, and your ears, while not full-blown cauliflower, are a little lumpy, a testament to a life of absorbing blows. You're becoming a man of few words. The constant wear and tear, the endless need to be on guard, the quiet solitude of the road. It changes you. You're tougher, but you're also more guarded, less trusting. Mickey is still your rock, your constant. He travels with you, a silent, watchful presence in your corner. He doesn't say much, but you know what he's thinking just from the way he wraps your hands or the way he looks at your opponent. He's teaching you more than just boxing. He's teaching you to read people, to see their weaknesses, to exploit their doubts. One night, before a fight in a backwater town, you're sitting in the locker room, your nerves jangling. Mickey just walks over and sits next to you. "Look at that guy," he says, nodding toward the opponent's locker room door. "He's got a nice suit. You know what that means? It means he's fighting for a new suit, not for his dinner. You're fighting for your dinner. The man fighting for his dinner always wins." It's a simple, brutal truth, and it helps calm you. Your biggest challenge so far comes in a fight against a guy named Iron Mike Malone. He's a well-known brawler with a reputation for a devastating right hand. He's got a winning record and he's been on the cover of a few of the boxing magazines. This is a big one. A mainstream historical fact is that in this era, the boxing magazines were as influential as television is today, and a feature story could catapult a boxer from obscurity to a title contender overnight. Iron Mike is one of those guys. The fight is at a larger arena, a real boxing venue, and the crowd is huge. It's the biggest crowd you've ever fought in front of. The fight is a war of attrition. Iron Mike is all power and forward motion, a relentless barrage of punches. He hits hard, and every punch you block or absorb sends a shudder through your arm. But you're quicker. You use your feet, you move, you jab. He's getting more and more frustrated. You can see his breath coming in ragged, angry puffs. He's trying to knock you out, but you're like water, slipping away from him every time he gets close. By the 6th round, he's a gasping, weary mess. You can see his hands dropping, his legs getting heavy. You start to pour it on, not with a knockout in mind, but with the intent to punish. You land a clean combination to the head, and he stumbles. You follow with a hook to the body, and you hear him grunt in pain. You're relentless. You've gone from surviving to dominating. The final bell rings, and the crowd is on its feet. A mix of cheers for you and disappointed groans for the favoured Iron Mike. The decision is unanimous. You won. You not only beat him, you outclassed him. You stand in the centre of the ring, your arms raised in victory, and you know you've just taken a massive step forward. You're not just a journeyman anymore, you're a contender. You're on the road to the title, and the road is paved with sweat, blood, and the dreams of every fighter you've left behind. The hunger is still there, but now it's mixed with something else, a fierce, burning ambition. The heavyweight dream is starting to seem like a possibility, a light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. You can almost feel it. After the fight with Iron Mike Malone, your world changes. The small sports page mentions become full-blown articles. You're no longer the up-and-comer, you're a legitimate contender. Frankie, your manager, gets a little slicker with his talk. The fight purses get a little bigger. The road to the title, once a distant, shimmering mirage, now seems like a clear, if still impossibly difficult path. But with every step you take, the opponents get tougher. The stakes get higher. The smiles from the men in suits get a little more predatory. A mainstream historical fact is that during the 1930s, the fight game became increasingly more organised, with powerful promoters and shadowy figures from the underworld beginning to control the top talent and the biggest purses. This era of professional boxing was a mix of legitimate sport and organised business, a dangerous combination for a young fighter. Mickey notices the change too. He's always been your rock, but now he's more vigilant. He watches the people around you with a weary suspicion that you're only just beginning to understand. The next big fight Frankie sets up for you is against a boxer named the Crusher Carter. The name alone sends a shiver down your spine. He's a true knockout artist, a terrifying force of nature in the ring. He's not a graceful dancer or a slick technician. He's a pure, unadulterated brawler. He doesn't move so much as he stalks. He has a reputation for what the sports writers call a killer instinct, a grim focus that allows him to land the final, devastating blow. You watch a reel of his old fights on a flickering projector in a smoky room, and you see it. You see him land a punch, and instead of backing off, he just keeps coming, a relentless storm of fists until his opponent is on the canvas, eyes glazed over. The prep for this fight is different. Mickey spends less time on your offense and more on your defense. He ain't got no jaw, Mickey says, a grim look on his face. He's all fists. You got to be a ghost in there. You hit him and you disappear. You hear me? He works you relentlessly on your footwork, your head movement, your ability to roll with a punch. He makes you spar with two guys at once, both of them swinging wildly, just to get you used to the idea of being swarmed. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some trainers in this period would use a bizarre method of having their fighters practice dodging by throwing small, heavy sandbags at them without warning. The idea was to develop a natural, reflexive, defensive instinct. You just use your hands and your feet, but the concept is the same. You have to learn to anticipate and avoid the worst. You're back in a real arena for this one, a full house. The crowd is buzzing with a different kind of energy, a hungry, almost morbid anticipation. They're not here to see a technical boxing match. They're here to see a knockout. They're here to see a spectacle. You feel the weight of their expectations as you climb into the ring. The Crusher Carter is already there, a hulking presence in the corner. He looks at you with a cold, detached gaze, a predatory look that makes your blood run cold. There's no hate in his eyes, just a grim, professional indifference. He's not angry. He's just here to do a job, and his job is to put you on the canvas. The bell rings, and he comes at you like a freight train, just like Mickey said. He's relentless. His punches are like bricks, and you can feel the air they displace. You move, you dance, you use every bit of footwork you've ever learned. You're a ghost, a phantom, a whisper of motion that he can't quite catch. He lands a few shots, a hook to the body that makes you grunt in pain, a glancing blow to the head that makes your ears ring. But you're a moving target. You're not trying to win by knockout. You're trying to win by surviving. You're peppering him with quick jabs, a flurry of small, stinging punches that are meant to distract him, to frustrate him, to make him more reckless. You can hear the crowd getting restless. They're not getting their show. But then, in the third round, he catches you. You get a little too comfortable. You let your guard drop for a fraction of a second, and he lands a devastating uppercut that you never even saw coming. It's a clean shot, a perfectly timed punch that lifts you off your feet. You feel an explosion of pain, a white-hot flash behind your eyes. Your knees turn to water. You can't hear, you can't see, you can't think. You're falling, and for a terrifying second, you feel the cold, hard reality of the canvas rushing up to meet you. You see a flash of your mother's face, of Mickey's grim expression. You hear that old voice in your head, the one that tells you not to fall. You've been knocked down before in sparring, but never like this. This is the big one. This is the moment your career could end. You hit the canvas with a bone-jarring thud. The crowd roars. You're on your hands and knees, and you feel the referee's hand on your shoulder, beginning the count. You can hear his voice, a distant muffled sound. 1, 2, 3. Your head is throbbing. Your body is screaming in protest, but you push up, a slow, agonizing effort. You get to your feet on 6. The crowd is on its feet, a mix of roars and gasps. You're standing, but you're a mess. You're wobbly, your head is still swimming, and your vision is a blurry haze. The referee wipes your gloves and motions for the fight to continue. You stumble toward him, and Crusher Carter moves in for the kill, that killer instinct kicking in. He's a hunter, and you're his prey. He throws a flurry of punches, but you're a veteran of this game now. You know how to survive. You clinch, you hold on to him, you tie him up and give yourself a few seconds to clear your head. The referee breaks you apart and you start to move, your feet a little steadier now. You use your long arms to keep him away, you pepper him with jabs, you stay just out of his range. The rest of the round is a testament to your willpower, a desperate act of survival. You take a few more shots, but you absorb them, you roll with them, you stay on your feet. The bell for the end of the round rings and you trudge back to your corner. Mickey looks at you, his face a grim mask. He wipes the blood from your lip, gives you some water. He doesn't have to say anything. You both know you just stared into the abyss and didn't blink. The rest of the fight is a grueling, exhausting war. You're still bruised and battered, but you're in control. Crusher Carter is getting frustrated. He can't land that knockout punch. You, on the other hand, are a machine, a relentless, tactical marvel. You land a clean combination in the final round that makes his knees buckle. He stays on his feet, but you can see the light go out of his eyes. He knows he can't win. The final bell rings, and you're still standing. It goes to a decision. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. Your hand is raised in victory, and the crowd gives you a standing ovation. Not for a knockout, but for your courage, for your grit, for your sheer refusal to quit. Historians still argue whether a fighter's courage is a matter of natural-born bravery, or if it's a learned instinct born out of pure desperation. You don't know the answer. All you know is you survived. You won. And the road to the heavyweight dream, once a flicker on the horizon, now feels like a tangible destination. The victory over the Crusher Carter solidifies your reputation. You're no longer just a contender. You're the next big thing. The sports writers can't get enough of you. They call you the Ghost or the Phantom for your elusive defensive style. They write about your grit, your heart, and your refusal to go down. The fight promoters come calling, and Frankie, your manager, is suddenly a very busy man. He's taking meetings in fancy restaurants you wouldn't dare step foot in, and he's talking about big money and even bigger fights. He starts talking about a title shot. Not just any title shot, the heavyweight title shot. The words hang in the air, impossibly heavy, impossibly enticing. A mainstream historical fact from the era is that the heavyweight champion was often considered the most famous athlete in the world, a symbol of national pride and a true American hero. To be the heavyweight champion was to be a legend. The idea of it, the mere possibility, consumes you. It's the ultimate goal, the shimmering prize at the end of a long, brutal road. It's more than just a belt. It's a way out, a permanent escape from the poverty and the hunger that have haunted you since childhood. It's a chance to build a life, to buy a real home for your mum and your sister, to never have to worry about where your next meal is coming from again. The dream of it is a powerful drug, a potent mix of ambition and desperation that pushes you to work harder than you ever thought possible. Your training regimen intensifies. Mickey is a taskmaster, a relentless force of nature. He puts you through your paces, pushing you to your physical and mental limits. You're running miles every morning, your lungs burning in the cold air. You're hitting the heavy bag until your knuckles bleed, the rhythmic thud a constant reminder of the pain and the possibility. You're doing endless sparring sessions, facing off against bigger, stronger opponents, just to get you ready for the size and power of the heavyweight division. You're eating better now too, a steady diet of meat and potatoes that puts some much-needed muscle on your lanky frame. You're growing stronger, faster, and more confident with every passing day. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this period is the popular belief among some fighters that eating a raw onion every day would thin the blood and make them faster on their feet. You just shake your head and stick to Mickey's tried and true methods, but you see a few of the other guys at the gym trying it, their breath a permanent pungent cloud. You start to get a taste of the celebrity that comes with being a top-tier boxer. People recognise you on the street now. They stop you. They ask for your autograph. They want to shake your hand. They call you a hero, a champion. You're invited to dinners and charity events, places where men in suits and women in elegant dresses smile at you and clap you on the back. It's a strange, surreal world, so different from the grimy back alleys where you learn to fight. You feel like a ghost, a phantom of your old self, navigating a world that isn't quite real. It's a nice dream, but you know it's just a facade, a temporary illusion that can be shattered by a single punch. You never forget who you are or where you came from. Frankie, your manager, keeps telling you to act the part. He wants you to smile for the cameras, to say the right things, to tell the reporters that you're going to knock out the champion in the first round. You just give him a wry smile and tell him you'll do your talking in the ring. You're a fighter, not an actor. Mickey is the only one who seems to understand. He just gives you a knowing look, a silent understanding that this is all just noise. The only thing that matters is the gym, the ring, and the work. Your next opponent is a real heavyweight, a big hulking man with a glass jaw and a powerful punch. Mickey calls him a paper champion, a guy who looks impressive but crumbles under pressure. Mickey tells you to go out there and finish him early, to show the world that you're a knockout artist too. You don't feel comfortable with the idea. You've always been a defensive fighter, a surgeon in the ring, not a brute. But Frankie is insisting. The public wants to see a knockout, he says. They want a show. You give them a show and you'll get that title shot. You go into the fight with a different game plan. You're not dancing and moving. You're stalking, you're looking for a way to land that final devastating punch. You take a few shots, a few glancing blows that make your teeth rattle. You land a few of your own, a few solid punches to the body and the head. He's tough, but you can feel him getting tired. You can see the doubt in his eyes. In the third round, you land a clean right hand that stuns him. He's on the ropes, wobbly and dazed. This is your chance. You pour it on, a flurry of punches, a relentless barrage that you know is going to put him down. He's not fighting back, just covering up, a lost look on his face. He's a man who has given up. You land one more, a crushing hook to the jaw that sends him to the canvas. The referee starts to count. He doesn't even try to get up. You've won by knockout. The crowd is on its feet, a thunderous roar filling the arena. You raise your arms in victory and you see Frankie in the crowd, a wide, triumphant smile on his face. You did it. You gave them the show they wanted. You're a knockout artist now. But a grim, unsettling feeling settles in your gut. You didn't feel good about it. You felt like a bully. You looked at the man on the canvas, a broken, defeated figure, and you saw a reflection of yourself. You saw a guy who had just taken one too many punches, a guy who had given everything he had to the game and had nothing left. Historians still argue whether a fighter's legacy should be measured by his knockouts or his technical prowess. You don't have an answer. You just have a knot in your stomach, a hollow feeling in your gut that the cheers and the flashing bulbs can't seem to fill. You won, but you feel like you lost something, a little piece of yourself that you'll never get back. But the dream is still there, a burning ember in the pit of your soul, the heavyweight dream. It's closer now than it's ever been. The fight with the paper champion was a win, a decisive knockout that sent a clear message to the boxing world. Frankie was ecstatic. He got you on a radio show, had you posing for pictures with a cigar in your hand, and was talking in hushed tones about the deal he was brokering for a title shot. You, on the other hand, felt a cold knot in your gut. The exhilaration of the victory was a faint memory, replaced by the grim reality of what it cost. You were a knockout artist now, a spectacle, and that felt dirty. You tried to shake the feeling, to convince yourself this was all just part of the game, that you had to do what it took to get to the top. But you couldn't shake the image of your last opponent, a broken, defeated man staring into the void. One evening, you're back at Gleason's gym, the familiar scent of leather and sweat a comforting constant. Mickey is there, alone, sitting on a stool in the middle of the ring, a ghost in the dim light. You can see the years etched on his face, a roadmap of every punch he's ever thrown and every punch he's ever seen. You walk over and sit on the edge of the ring. You're not sure what to say. You just sit in the silence, a quiet understanding passing between you. After a long while he speaks, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that seems to echo in the empty gym. You didn't like it, he says, a statement, not a question. You just shake your head. No, you say, the word a simple, honest truth. I felt dirty. Mickey just nods, a slow, weary gesture. Yeah, he says, I know that feeling. And then he tells you a story you've never heard before. He tells you about a time before Gleason's, a time when he was a boxer himself. A mainstream historical fact is that many trainers of this era were former fighters who had a ring history, a shared past of pain and triumph that gave them an undeniable credibility with their pupils. Mickey was one of them. He was a promising young middleweight, a slick, fast fighter with a real chance at a title. He was on his way up just like you. He tells you about his final fight, a bout against a guy named One Punch O'Malley, a brawler with a reputation for a single devastating knockout punch. Mickey was winning the fight. He was outclassing him, dancing circles around him. He was a phantom just like you. But in the 8th round, O'Malley, in a last desperate flurry, caught him with a lucky right hook. Mickey went down. He got up on 9, wobbly and dazed, but he was still on his feet. He could have survived the round, he could have recovered, but his manager, a slick, fast-talking man just like Frankie, was screaming at him from the corner. Finish him! Finish him, Mickey! The crowd wants a knockout! They want a show! So Mickey, against his better judgment, went in for the kill. He landed a flurry of punches, a relentless barrage that put O'Malley down for good. But when he looked down at the man on the canvas, he saw more than a defeated opponent. He saw a man who wasn't moving. He saw a man who had taken one too many punches. He saw a man who would never get up again. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in the 1930s, medical intervention in the ring was almost non-existent. A fighter was on his own, and if he went down for good. The memory still haunts Mickey. He says he went to the hospital later, and he saw O'Malley, his eyes glassy and vacant. He had suffered what they now call punch-drunk syndrome, a permanent debilitating brain injury. O'Malley was a vegetable, a ghost of a man. Mickey never fought again. He gave it up. He opened Gleason's gym, and he vowed that he would never let another kid do what he did. He would never let another kid put a man in the hospital for the sake of a show. He would teach them to be smart, to be defensive, to be a ghost in the ring. He would teach them to win, but he would also teach them to survive, to be in control, to not give in to the bloodlust of the crowd. The story hangs in the air, a cold, heavy weight. You look at Mickey, and you see him not just as a trainer, but as a survivor. You see the pain and the regret etched into his face, the ghost of O'Malley haunting him still. You understand now why he's so hard on you, why he's so relentless in his training, why he insists on a defensive style. He's not just teaching you to fight, he's teaching you to not end up like him. He's teaching you to be better than the system, to be in control, to be smart. Historians still argue whether the killer instinct of some boxers is a product of their upbringing and environment, or if it's a cold, calculated decision to put your opponent in harm's way for the sake of a win. You don't know the answer, and after hearing Mickey's story you don't want to. All you know is you have a choice to make. You can give in to Frankie's demands, you can become the knockout artist the crowd wants, or you can stick to your guns. You can be the ghost, the smart, tactical fighter who wins on his own terms. Mickey looks at you, his eyes a deep, unwavering shade of grey. "You got a choice to make, kid," he says, his voice a low whisper. "You can be a hero, or you can be a killer. You can get that title, but you got to decide what you're willing to give up to get it." The words settle deep in your gut, a profound, chilling truth. You're not just fighting for a title, you are fighting for your soul. You're fighting for your place in the long, bloody history of the fight game. You're a different fighter now. You have a new purpose, a new resolve. You will get to the top, but you will do it your way. You will honour Mickey's secret, and you will become the best fighter you can be. And you'll do it without ever hurting anyone more than you have to. With your new understanding of Mickey's past and your own renewed sense of purpose, you step into the next phase of your career. The public, the reporters, and even Frankie still see you as a knockout artist, a new force to be reckoned with. But in your heart, you know you're not. You're a ghost, a dancer, a technician who wins by outsmarting, not by overpowering. You've had a few more fights, each one a strategic masterpiece where you've outmaneuvered your opponent, landed thousands of jabs, and won by a decisive but bloodless decision. The crowds don't love it, not as much as a knockout, but you don't care. You're fighting for yourself now, for Mickey, and for the ghost of a man you never even met. Frankie, however, is not a fan of your new style. "You're a star now, kid," he tells you one day, his hands waving in exasperation. "Stars don't dance. Stars knock people out. You want that title shot? You got to give him a show. You just look at him with a stony silence, and he knows better than to push it. He knows you're his meal ticket, and for now your wins are enough." The fame, however, is a relentless, exhausting beast. You're on the cover of the boxing magazines, your face a grim, determined mask. You're doing radio interviews, your voice a little shaky and unsure. You're asked to attend parties and events, where people treat you like a prize show dog, a curiosity to be examined and admired. It's a surreal, lonely existence. A mainstream historical fact is that in the 1930s, the celebrity of a boxer could be as much a part of their marketability as their fighting record, a fact that promoters and managers exploited to the fullest extent. You're living proof of that. You feel a profound sense of isolation. The people who surround you are not your friends. They're parasites feeding off your success. The men in suits, the slick promoters, the reporters with their probing questions, they all want a piece of you. They want a story. They want a headline. They don't care about the bruises on your ribs, the constant ache in your hands, or the weight of a ghost on your soul. They just care about the spectacle. You find yourself retreating into a shell, a quiet, watchful presence who speaks only when necessary. You feel like a stranger in your own life. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this era is the number of strange and often outlandish marketing stunts boxers were forced to participate in. You're once forced to pose for a photo with a famous actress, and she's supposed to be teaching you how to walk with style. The whole thing is absurd and demeaning, but Frankie insists it's good for the brand. You stand there, a little awkward and stiff, while the actress, a woman with a fake smile and an icy demeanour, whispers in your ear, "Just pretend you're a real human." It's a moment of profound loneliness, a stark reminder that you're just a product, a thing to be sold. The only time you feel like yourself is in the gym, with Mickey. He's your rock, your anchor in a sea of sharks. He doesn't ask you to be anything you're not. He just watches you, a knowing look in his eyes, a silent understanding that you're both just trying to survive. He's teaching you new things now, a subtle shift in your footwork, a new way to throw a feint. He's moulding you into a more complete fighter, a man who can win a fight on his mind alone. He still doesn't talk much, but in the silence, you learn more from him than you ever do from Frankie's endless empty promises. Historians still argue whether the loneliness of celebrity is an inherent part of fame or a byproduct of the exploitative systems that existed in early professional sports. You don't know the answer. All you know is you're alone. You're in a city that's not your own, in a hotel room that's not your home, and your only companions are a silent old man and a slick-talking manager who's only in it for the money. You think about your family back home, about your mum's tired face, about your sister's small hands. You think about the life you're trying to build for them, and you wonder if it's worth the price you're paying. The isolation, the constant scrutiny, the feeling that you're just a commodity. It's a heavy burden, a weight that you carry with you every single day. One evening you're sitting in a cramped, stuffy dressing room before a fight, and a young kid, a reporter from a small newspaper, comes to interview you. He's nervous, his hands shaking as he holds out his notebook. He asks you the same tired questions about your strategy, about your training, about the knockout you delivered a few months back. You give him the same tired answers, a series of one-word grunts and clichés. He looks disappointed. "I don't get it," he says, his voice a whisper. "You're a hero. You're living the dream. Why do you look so sad?" The question catches you off guard. You don't have an answer. You're not sad, not really. You're just empty. You're a hollow man, a ghost in the machine. You think about the life you left behind, the cold, the hunger, the desperation, and you think about the life you have now, the glitz, the glamour, the profound, overwhelming loneliness. And you realise, with a chilling certainty, that you've traded one kind of prison for another. You have a chance to get out, to escape it all, but only if you win the one fight that matters. The title shot is coming. Frankie is talking to the champion's people. The biggest fight of your life is just on the horizon, and you know, with a cold, clear sense of dread, that it's going to be a war. You don't know if you'll win, but you know you have to try. You have to try to get out of this prison, and for one last time you have to find the hunger, the fire, the sheer will to survive. The loneliness and the grind finally start to catch up with you. The relentless pace of your career, the constant travel, the endless training, the fights, begins to take a physical toll. You're not a kid anymore. You've been in the game for years now, and every punch you've taken, every blow you've absorbed, every bruise you've earned, they all start to add up. You wake up with a dull ache in your ribs that never seems to go away. Your hands, once your most powerful weapons, are a constant source of throbbing, bone-deep pain. You feel a persistent ringing in your ears that you know isn't going to go away. It's a physical manifestation of a profound spiritual exhaustion. A mainstream historical fact from this era is that boxers often fought with untreated injuries, from broken hands to concussions, due to the lack of proper medical care and the need to keep fighting to make money. You're living proof of that harsh reality. You try to hide it. You wrap your hands a little tighter, you grit your teeth a little harder, and you don't tell Mickey about the pain that shoots up your arm every time you land a punch. You can't afford to be weak, not now. The title shot is within reach. Frankie, your manager, is finalising the details, and the papers are talking about you and the champion, a man named Gentleman Jack Dempsey. Not the one you know from the history books, but a different one, a bruising, powerful heavyweight. The public is hungry for this fight, a clash of styles, a showdown between a graceful phantom and a powerful brawler. The dream, that beautiful glittering illusion, is so close you can almost taste it, and you know you can't let it go. But the body has a memory all its own. In a sparring session one afternoon, a simple straight jab from your partner sends a bolt of pain up your arm. You wince and drop your guard for a fraction of a second. The sparring partner, a kid you could outfight with one hand tied behind your back, lands a clean hook to your jaw that sends you to the canvas. You're not hurt, not really, but the embarrassment of it, the simple fact that you got dropped by a nobody, is a bitter pill to swallow. Mickey is in the ring in an instant, his face a mask of concern. He helps you up and you try to pretend it's nothing, but he can see it. He can see the wince of pain on your face, the tremor in your hand. He doesn't say anything, but his eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, tell you everything. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some boxers of this time would use unconventional remedies to deal with their injuries, from soaking their hands in a mixture of pickle brine and hot water to a kind of folk medicine poultice made from crushed herbs and leaves. You're tempted, but you know it's useless. The damage is done. The aches and pains are not an injury you can heal. They're the price you've paid for your success. They're a permanent part of you now, a ghost that you'll have to live with for the rest of your life. You feel like a worn-out machine, a car with too many miles on it, a clock with a ticking that's a little off. The reality of your physical decline is a crushing weight. You can't train as hard as you used to. You have to take more breaks. The pain in your hands is a constant distraction, a little voice in the back of your head telling you to stop, to quit, to give up. You try to push through it. You try to tell yourself you're a fighter, that this is what you do, but the whispers are getting louder, the pain more insistent. One afternoon, you and Mickey are wrapping your hands for a sparring session, and you flinch in pain. He stops what he's doing and looks at you, a hard, cold look in his eyes. He takes off your gloves, unwraps the tape and examines your hands. They're swollen, discoloured, and covered in a tapestry of old scars. He presses on a knuckle, and you wince in pain. He doesn't say anything, but he just shakes his head, a gesture of profound, weary sadness. "You're broken, kid," he says, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "You're a champion in your soul, but your body is telling you it's had enough." The words hit you like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that leaves you breathless. You want to deny it, to tell him he's wrong, but you can't. The truth of it, the simple, brutal reality of it, is too overwhelming to ignore. You're a fighter, but your body is failing you. The dream is so close, and yet you feel like it's slipping through your fingers, like sand in an hourglass. Historians still argue whether the cumulative damage from fighting in the 1930s inevitably led to a boxer's early retirement, or if it was the result of a fighter's inability to adapt their style as their body began to fail. You don't have an answer. You just have the pain. The thought of quitting, of walking away from it all, is a tempting one. You could go home. You could use the money you've earned to start a new life. But then you remember your family. You remember the hunger, the cold, the poverty you fought so hard to escape. And you remember the ghost of Mickey's opponent, the man who was broken for nothing. You're so close to the top, so close to making it all mean something. You can't quit. You won't quit. You'll fight through the pain. You'll grit your teeth. You'll rely on your wits and your will. You'll be smarter, more elusive. You'll dance. You'll faint. You'll be a ghost. You'll do whatever it takes to get to that title shot. The price is high, but the reward is everything. You'll risk it all, one last time, for the chance to make it all mean something. The pain is a constant companion now. It's a dull, throbbing ache in your hands and a deep, gnawing weariness in your bones. You've adapted, of course. You're a ghost. You don't take as many punches anymore. You've become even more elusive, more defensive. You win your fights, but they're not the crowd-pleasing knockouts Frankie wants. They're technical masterclasses, exhibitions of footwork and wit, victories won by 100 small jabs and 100 well-placed feints. You're frustrating your opponents, and you're frustrating your manager too. A mainstream historical fact is that in the 1930s, match-fixing and corruption were a rampant and open secret in professional boxing, with organised crime figures exerting heavy influence over fighters and promoters. You've heard the whispers, seen the shady characters hanging around the edges of the boxing rings, but you never thought it would touch you. Frankie corners you one day in a back hallway of the gym. He's sweating, his hands are shaking, and there's a look in his eyes that you've never seen before, a look of pure, unadulterated fear. He talks in hushed, panicked tones about a problem with your upcoming fight. He tells you the fight is a must-win, but not in the way you think. He tells you that your opponent, a well-known bruiser named Cannonball Carl, isn't going to fight you. Not really. He's going to take a dive. You're supposed to knock him out in the 3rd round, a showy, crowd-pleasing knockout that will get the newspapers buzzing and make Frankie a lot of money. You just stare at him, a cold, empty feeling settling in your gut. He's not asking you. He's telling you. You protest, of course. You tell him that's not who you are. You tell him you're a fighter, not an actor. You tell him you don't do fixed fights. Frankie just laughs, a hollow, bitter sound. "Don't be a fool, kid," he says, his voice a low hiss. "This ain't about being a fighter. This is about being smart. You're broken, kid. Your hands are shot. You ain't going to last much longer. This is your chance. You play ball, you get a big payout, and you get that title shot. You don't, and well, they don't like it when people don't play ball." He motions to the door with a subtle nod, and you see 2 men, hulking figures in dark suits, leaning against the wall. You get the message. This isn't just about a career anymore. This is about your life. The moral dilemma is a crushing weight. You think about Mickey, about the ghost of his opponent, about the vow you made to yourself to be a clean fighter, to win on your own terms. But you also think about your family, about the money, about the chance to get out of this game for good. You think about those 2 hulking men outside, and a shiver of fear runs down your spine. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in this era, some boxers, even those who were forced to throw a fight, developed their own secret codes in the ring to signal to their corner and the gamblers how the fight was progressing, using subtle movements or gestures to communicate their status without the audience noticing. You consider it, but you know it's useless. This isn't a signal, this is a command. You go to Mickey, of course. You tell him everything. He listens, his face a grim mask. He doesn't look surprised. He just looks tired. "It's the game, kid," he says, a weary sadness in his voice. "This is the price you pay for getting to the top." They own you. You ask him what you should do. He doesn't have an answer. "That's your fight, not mine," he says. "You got to decide what you're willing to live with." The day of the fight arrives, and the weight of your decision is a physical thing. You feel sick to your stomach. You can see the cameras, the reporters, the crowd. You can see Frankie, a nervous smile plastered on his face. You climb into the ring, and you see your opponent, Cannonball Carl. He's a big, menacing-looking guy, but he looks at you with a strange mixture of pity and contempt. You know what's coming. The referee gives his instructions, and a shared, silent moment of understanding passes between you and Carl. He knows. You know. You're just 2 players in a rigged game. The bell rings. You go through the motions. You feint, you dance, you land a few perfunctory jabs. Cannonball Carl doesn't really fight back. He just covers up, moves in a clumsy telegraphed way, a silent signal that he's following the script. The crowd is getting restless. They're here for a show, and they're not getting one. You can hear Frankie yelling from your corner, "Go for it! Finish him!" You're supposed to end it in the 3rd round. But as the seconds tick by, a deep, seething anger begins to simmer in your gut. You're a fighter. You're not a puppet. You're not going to do this. You start to really fight. You land a clean, sharp jab that sends his head snapping back. He looks at you, a shocked expression on his face. You can feel the roar of the crowd, a sudden electric surge of energy. You land a quick combination to his body. He grunts in pain. He looks at you with an angry, confused expression, and he starts to really fight back. He throws a wild haymaker that you easily dodge, but the message is clear. He's not going to take a dive. He's going to make you earn it. You're both trapped, 2 desperate men fighting in a ring you can't escape. You fight for real, a vicious, brutal fight that leaves you both battered and bruised. You win, but it's a decision, a grinding, brutal victory that leaves you with 2 black eyes and a sprained hand. Frankie is livid. He's screaming at you in the locker room, his face a contorted mask of rage. "You ruined it," he yells. "You ruined everything. They're not going to be happy." You just look at him with a cold, clear silence. You didn't do it for the money. You didn't do it for the title. You did it for yourself. You did it because you were a fighter, and no one, not even the shadowy figures who ran the game, was going to take that away from you. Historians still argue whether boxers who refused to throw a fight were seen as courageous and principled heroes, or simply as foolish men who sealed their own fate by defying a system they could not beat. You're not a hero. You're just a man who had to look at himself in the mirror. You look at your bruised face, at your swollen hands, and you know you made the right choice. The title shot might be gone now. The money might be gone now. But you're a fighter. You're a man of principle. And in this cruel, brutal game, that's all you have left. The aftermath of the crooked fight is a storm. Frankie, your manager, is furious. The shadowy figures who run the game are not happy. The newspapers, which were expecting a knockout, are writing about your uninspired victory, about a boring technical bout. They're calling you a disappointment. You've become an enemy of the very system that created you. Your career, for all intents and purposes, should be over. You're a pariah, a man who refused to play ball, a fighter who chose principle over profit. But then, a strange thing happens. The public, the real people, the ones who listen on the radio and read the papers, they love you for it. They're tired of the rigged fights, the fixed matches and the spectacle. They're tired of being treated like fools. They see your win not as a boring defeat, but as a victory of grit over corruption. They see you as a hero. Letters start arriving at the gym, from people all over the country. Letters from farmers, from factory workers, from people who are just like you. They write about how you gave them hope, how you reminded them that a man can still stand up for what's right. You read the letters, your hands shaking, and for the first time in a long time you don't feel so alone. And then the phone rings. It's a man named Mr. Thompson, the champion's manager. He's a different kind of guy, calm, professional, and straight-laced. He tells Frankie that the champion, Gentleman Jack Dempsey, a man who built his legacy on honesty and hard work, wants to fight you. Not because of the money or the public interest, but because you're a real fighter. He respects you. He wants to fight a man who won't quit, a man who won't sell out. A mainstream historical fact is that in an era of rampant corruption, some boxers and their managers were known for being scrupulously honest, a reputation that earned them a kind of grudging respect from both the public and their peers. You and the champion are two of them. The news hits you like a physical blow. The title shot. It's real. It's not a dream. It's not a promise. It's a reality. Frankie is ecstatic. He's talking a mile a minute, a desperate, frantic energy in his voice. We're back in the game, kid. We're back in the game. You just sit there, a calm, quiet sense of awe settling over you. You look at Mickey, and he just gives you a slow, knowing nod. He knows this is it. The biggest fight of your life. The fight that will define your career. Your training regimen for this fight is unlike anything you've ever experienced. Mickey is a different man now. He's not just your trainer. He's your field marshal, your strategist. He studies films of the champion's fights, a flickering, grainy, black and white reel that you both watch over and over again. You study his stance, his footwork, the way he sets up his devastating left hook. He's a brawler, a pure knockout artist, a terrifying force of nature in the ring. He's strong, he's fast, and he hits like a truck. You know you can't win this fight by standing and trading blows. You can't win this fight by being a hero. You have to win it by being a ghost. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this time is the practice of road work, in which boxers would run for miles and miles in the dead of night, often in freezing temperatures, convinced that it would build not just physical endurance, but a kind of grim, mental fortitude that would serve them well in the ring. You do it. You run until your lungs burn and your legs feel like lead, and with every step you feel a deep, burning resolve. You're not running to win, you're running to survive. Mickey is relentlessly hard on you. He pushes you to your limits, and then he pushes you a little further. He makes you spar with 2, sometimes 3, bigger, stronger guys at once, all of them instructed to hit you hard, to simulate the unrelenting pressure of the champion. You get battered and bruised. Your hands, already a constant source of pain, are screaming in protest. You feel like a piece of meat, a punching bag. But you also feel a new kind of strength, a profound, unshakable confidence in your ability to survive. You're the ghost, you're the phantom, you're a man who can't be hit. Historians still argue whether a fighter's best weapon is his punch or his mind. You're not a puncher, you're a thinker. You and Mickey develop a game plan, a masterful strategy of movement, feints and footwork. You'll be a ghost in the ring, a phantom, a whisper of a man who can't be hit. You'll frustrate him, you'll tire him, and you'll wear him down. You'll land 1,000 small punches, 1,000 tiny cuts that will bleed him dry. You won't go for the knockout, you'll go for the win. You'll be smart. The day of the fight is a long, agonizing wait. You're not scared, not in the way you used to be. You're calm, focused, and resolved. You're an engine, a machine, and you're ready to do the work. The fight is at Madison Square Garden, the mecca of boxing, a place you've only dreamed of. The roar of the crowd is a physical force, a living, breathing monster that makes the entire arena shake. You walk down the aisle, the spotlight a harsh, blinding presence. The champ is in the ring, a hulking, confident presence. He looks at you with a professional respect, a look that says he knows you're a real fighter. He knows you're here to win. The referee gives his instructions. The crowd roars, the bell rings, and your final, terrifying journey begins. The championship bout is a whirlwind of sound and fury. The roar of the crowd at Madison Square Garden is a living, breathing thing, a deafening wave of energy that makes the entire arena tremble. The air is thick with the scent of popcorn, cigar smoke, and the palpable tension of two men about to put their lives on the line. You stand in your corner, and for a brief, fleeting moment, the roar fades into a quiet hum, and you see not the thousands of faces, but just one, Mickey's. He looks at you, his face a grim, resolute mask. He gives you a final, silent nod, and you know what he's thinking. Be a ghost. The bell rings, a sharp, clean sound that slices through the air. And then, there is only the fight. The champion, gentleman, Jack Dempsey, is everything they said he was. He's a mountain of a man, a hulking, powerful presence that moves with a terrifying grace. He comes at you, a relentless storm of punches, a barrage of left hooks and straight rights that are meant to end it early. You remember your training, all those long agonizing hours in the gym, and you move, you dance, you use your feet to stay just out of his range, letting his powerful punches whiz past your head, feeling the wind from them. You're a phantom, a whisper of a man who can't be hit. He lands a few glancing blows, a few punches that connect with your arms and your gloves, and you feel the raw, brutal power behind them. He's a force of nature. The first few rounds are a brutal dance of survival. You're constantly moving, constantly shifting, constantly a step ahead of him. The crowd, which was expecting a knockout, is getting restless. They're booing, they're yelling at you to stand and fight. Frankie, from your corner, is yelling something you can't make out. But you don't care. You're in a world of your own, a small insulated bubble of focus and grit. You're a surgeon, a technician, and you're dissecting him, one small, precise punch at a time. You're landing 100 jabs, 1,000 small blows to his face and body, punches that aren't meant to knock him out, but to frustrate him, to tire him, to wear him down. He's getting angry. You can see it in his eyes, in the way his jaw clenches. He's not used to this. He's used to opponents who stand and fight. He's used to putting men on the canvas in the first few rounds. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of tactical, defensive style, a direct counter to the brawling style of the era, was a highly effective but often unpopular strategy. Fans wanted to see a slugfest, not a chess match. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in order to keep their stamina up, some fighters would drink a strange homebrewed concoction of honey, vinegar and water in their corner between rounds, believing it gave them a secret energy boost. You stick to water, but you're constantly aware of the small, strange rituals that fill the space between the rounds. By the 5th round, you can see the change. The champion is getting tired. His punches, while still powerful, are slower, less precise. You're not gassed. You're a machine, an engine that just keeps going. You fought through the pain in your hands, the ache in your ribs. You fought through the exhaustion. You fought through the ghost of Mickey's opponent and the ghost of every man you've ever put on the canvas. You're still a ghost, but you're a ghost with a purpose now. You're a ghost with a mission. You start to land more clean punches, a flurry of combinations that snap his head back. He's on the defensive now, something he's never had to do before. You can see the fear in his eyes, a flicker of doubt. The crowd, which was booing you just a few rounds ago, is now on its feet, a thunderous roar of excitement. They're seeing something they've never seen before, a ghost who can't be hit, a man who is systematically taking down a giant. You're a boxer, a true master of the sweet science. You're not fighting to knock him out, You're fighting to win, to make him miss, to make him look foolish, to prove that your way is the right way. The later rounds are a blur of exhaustion and grit. You're trading blows now, but you're trading smart. You're taking one to land too, but you're rolling with them, absorbing the impact, using your wits and your will to stay on your feet. He lands a solid right hand that sends a shockwave through your body, and your legs feel like jello. You clinch, you hold on to him, you give yourself a few precious seconds to recover. He pushes you away, and you're still standing, bruised and battered, but you're still in the fight. You land a clean, straight right to his jaw that makes his knees buckle. He stays on his feet, but you can see the light go out of his eyes. He knows he can't win. He's a man who has given up. The final bell rings, a sound that feels like a benediction. You're both standing, a bloody, bruised mess. You're panting, your chest heaving, your body screaming in protest. The champion looks at you, and he gives you a tired, weary nod. He knows. The crowd is on its feet, a roar that shakes the very foundation of the building. The referee raises your hand, and the flashbulbs explode. 1,000 brilliant flashes that make the world go white. You've won. You've won the heavyweight title. You're a champion, and you did it your way. You look at Mickey in the corner, and he's not smiling. He's crying. Not tears of joy, but tears of relief. He knows what you did. You didn't become a killer. You became a hero. Historians still argue whether the most iconic heavyweight title fights of the 1930s were more about the clash of personalities or the clash of fighting styles. You don't have an answer. You just have the belt on your shoulder and a profound, overwhelming sense of peace. You've done it. You've climbed the mountain, you've reached the top, and you did it with your heart and your soul intact. The moments after the final bell are a blur. You're a champion. The world is a cacophony of sound and light. Flashbulbs are popping, reporters are shouting questions, and people are swarming the ring, all of them wanting a piece of you. You're lifted onto the shoulders of a few of your cornermen, the heavyweight belt a heavy, precious weight on your shoulder. You look down at the champion, your defeated opponent, and he's still a man of dignity and grace. He gives you a tired nod, and you know there's a mutual respect between you. He's a fighter too, and he knows you earned this. You're a champion, but you're also just a man, a bruised, battered and exhausted human being who just survived the biggest war of his life. The locker room is a madhouse. Frankie is there, a wide, triumphant smile on his face, shaking hands and taking pictures. The reporters are there, scribbling notes. Their questions a barrage of noise. You just sit on the splintery bench, your chest heaving, your body screaming in protest. Mickey is there, a silent, watchful presence. He hands you a bottle of water, and you drink it down in a single thirsty gulp. He looks at you, his face a mixture of pride and a profound, weary sadness. You're a champion, but you're also a ghost, a man who has lost a little piece of himself with every punch. A mainstream historical fact is that in the 1930s, the post-fight celebration was often as brutal as the fight itself, with boxers being paraded around and forced to talk to reporters, often while still in a state of physical and mental exhaustion. You're living that reality now. The next few days are a surreal blur of parades, parties and press conferences. You're a hero. They call you the people's champion. They write about your grit, your heart, your refusal to give up. You're asked to pose for pictures with movie stars, with politicians, with the men in the suits who used to look at you like you were nothing. You smile for the cameras, you shake their hands, but you feel like a ghost, an imposter. You're a man who learned to fight in a back alley, and now you're sitting in a fancy restaurant, eating food you can barely swallow. You're alone. The loneliness you felt before is a crushing weight now, a profound, isolating silence that no amount of cheers or applause can fill. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that after a big fight, some boxers would insist on a specific, strange ritual to reset their bodies, such as walking a full mile backward or sleeping with their head at the foot of the bed, believing it would help their mind and body recover faster. You don't have the luxury of rituals, you just have the silence, the profound, empty silence of a champion who has nowhere left to go. The physical toll of the fight is immense. Your hands, already a source of constant pain, are swollen and discoloured, and you can barely clench them into a fist. Your ribs ache with every breath. You have a persistent, throbbing headache that won't go away. You feel like a broken doll, a worn-out machine that just keeps going out of sheer bone-deep habit. You're a champion, and you're a mess. The adrenaline that fueled you through the fight is gone now, replaced by a profound spiritual emptiness. You're standing at the top of the mountain, but you're all alone. The victory is sweet, but it's a bitter, painful sweetness. You did it. You won. But you also feel like you lost something, a piece of your soul, a little bit of your humanity. You're a champion, but you're also just a man, and the weight of it is a crushing burden. You go back to the gym, your sanctuary. It's quiet now. Mickey is there, and he just sits in the corner watching you. You don't have to talk. You just sit in the silence, a profound, shared moment of understanding. You're a champion, but you're also just a kid from the back alleys, and he's a grizzled old man who's seen it all. You've both climbed a mountain, and now you're just two people, sitting in the silence, waiting for the world to catch up. Historians still argue whether a boxer's greatest victory is the one they earn in the ring, or the one they earn after, the one where they find a way to live a normal life. You don't have an answer. You just have the weight of a belt and the profound, overwhelming loneliness of a man who has nowhere left to go. The temporary stillness that follows the fight is a strange and unnerving one. The phone doesn't ring as much. The reporters don't hound you as often. The crowds don't cheer as loudly. The world, it seems, has moved on. You're a champion, but you're also a forgotten hero, a man whose time has passed. The dream is over. The fight is won. And you have to figure out what comes next. You don't have an answer. You just have the silence, the profound, overwhelming silence of a man who is all alone. And you know, with a chilling certainty, that the hardest fight you'll ever have is the one you're about to have with yourself. The stillness of being a champion is more unsettling than the chaos of fighting. The adoring crowds have gone home. The reporters have found a new story. You're left with the silence. And in that silence, the ghosts start to appear. They're not spectral figures or apparitions. They're the faces of the men you fought. You see them in the quiet moments. When you're walking down the street, their faces flicker in the faces of strangers. When you're trying to sleep, their eyes stare back at you from the darkness behind your own eyelids. You see the fear, the anger, the pain, the defeat, every emotion you ever inflicted on another man. The ghost of Sailor Smith, your first professional opponent, with his cocky grin and his eventual look of defeat. The ghost of Iron Mike Malone, the man you wore down until he had nothing left. The ghost of the Crusher Carter, the man you stared down after he knocked you to the canvas, the man who was just a force of nature. And the ghost of the champion, Gentleman Jack Dempsey, who looked at you with a profound sense of respect and defeat after you took his title. These are the ghosts of the ring, and they are your legacy. A mainstream historical fact is that many boxers, particularly those who relied on a high number of knockouts, suffered from a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, stress, a form of ring sickness that left them haunted by the violence they inflicted on others. You're experiencing a version of that, but it's not the violence that haunts you. It's the sheer, brutal humanity of it. You saw their dreams, their hunger, their desperation, and you took it all away from them. You didn't do it with hate. You did it with a grim, professional indifference, a cold, clinical efficiency. And that, you realise, is what makes it so much worse. You weren't a monster. You were just a machine. And the men you fought were just cogs in that machine, broken for your benefit. Mickey is the only one who understands. He sees the ghosts too. He's been living with them for years, ever since that final fight, ever since that day he looked down at the ghost of a man named One Punch O'Malley. He doesn't say anything, of course. He just sits in the gym, a silent, watchful presence, a living embodiment of the toll this game takes on a man. You're a champion, but you're also a man who is profoundly, irrevocably broken. The weight of the title belt is a crushing burden, a testament to a victory that feels more like a profound loss. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some parts of the world, particularly in Latin American boxing culture, there was a superstition that a fighter's spirit, his duende, was inextricably linked to the spirits of the men he had defeated. It was believed that a boxer who had knocked out too many opponents would eventually be consumed by the ghosts of their defeated foes, a kind of poetic justice that was as much a psychological reality as a spiritual one. You feel that now. You feel the ghosts of the ring in your blood, in your bones, in every step you take. They are a part of you now, a constant nagging reminder of the price you paid for your success. You try to find a way out of it. You try to immerse yourself in the world of a champion. You buy a nice suit. You go to a fancy restaurant. You try to live the life you fought so hard to earn. But it all feels like a costume, a performance. You feel like a ghost walking through a world of living people. You don't belong there. Your home is the gym. Your family is Mickey. Your world is the quiet, painful solitude of a man who has lost his way. The newspapers are already talking about your next fight. The next challenger, a hungry young kid who's a lot like you were when you started. A kid with fire in his eyes and an emptiness in his stomach. You see him in a picture in the paper, and you feel a strange mix of pity and fear. You know what he's going to do. He's going to come at you with everything he has, with a hunger that you haven't felt in years. He's going to try to take your title, your livelihood, your legacy. And you know you have to fight him. You're a champion. It's your duty to defend your title. But you also know you can't go through that again. You can't take another man's dream, another man's hope, another man's soul. Historians still argue whether the mental and psychological toll of a boxing career is a matter of an individual's resilience or a grim byproduct of a sport that, by its very nature, demands a man to destroy another man's will. You're living the answer now, and you know it's both. You're a resilient man, but you're also a broken one, and you know, with a chilling certainty, that the only way to get rid of the ghost is to stop fighting them. You have to walk away. You have to end it all. You have to find a way to live a normal life, a life without the roar of the crowd, a life without the sound of the bell, a life without the profound, overwhelming loneliness of a man who is all alone at the top of the world. The title is a crushing burden. The ghosts are a constant reminder of the price you paid. The only way out is to give it all up. The decision to walk away from the ring is a quiet one. There's no grand announcement, no press conference, no farewell tour. You just stop showing up at the gym. You stop taking Frankie's calls. You leave the title belt in a dusty corner of your closet, a forgotten relic of a life you're trying to leave behind. The immediate aftermath is a profound, disorienting stillness. The roar of the crowd has been replaced by the quiet hum of a city that doesn't care who you are. The spotlight has faded, and you're just another face in the crowd. A mainstream historical fact from this period is that many boxers of the era struggled to transition to a life outside the ring, as they had no other skills or education, and the financial rewards, while seemingly large, were often squandered or stolen by unscrupulous managers. You're living that now. You have money, but you don't have a purpose. You try to find a way to live a normal life. You try to get a job, a real job, but you realise you don't know how to do anything but fight. You're a champion, but you can't run a cash register. You can't lay a brick. You can't fix a car. The world is a strange new place, and you feel like a visitor from another planet. The loneliness is a crushing weight. You don't have friends, not really. The people you knew were all part of the boxing world, and that world is gone now. You try to reach out to them, to the guys you fought with, but they're all still in the game, still fighting, still chasing a dream that you've already caught and found to be empty. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some retired boxers would find a strange kind of comfort in working with their hands, taking up hobbies like woodworking or painting, a way of using their physicality in a constructive, non-violent way. You try it. You try to whittle a small piece of wood, but your hands, swollen and bruised from years of fighting, just won't cooperate. The wood splintered and you threw the knife across the room in a fit of pure, unadulterated frustration. The fight is over, but the fighter, you realise with a sickening certainty, is still there. The ghosts are still there too. You see them in the faces of strangers. You see them in the reflection in a window. They're a constant nagging reminder of the person you used to be, the things you did, the lives you affected. You can't escape them. You're a champion, but you're also a man who is profoundly, irrevocably broken. The weight of your past is a crushing burden, a shadow that you can't escape. The money, you realise, is just a temporary solution. You've sent most of it home, and you have enough to live on for a while, but it's not a permanent solution. You can't just sit around and do nothing. You have to find a new purpose. You have to find a way to live a life without the roar of the crowd, without the sound of the bell, without the profound, overwhelming loneliness of a man who is all alone at the top of the world. You go back to the gym. It's the only place you feel at home, the only place that feels real. It's quiet now. Mickey is there, his face a roadmap of a life spent in the fight game. He doesn't say anything. He just sits on a stool, watching the young kids spar, his eyes a deep, knowing shade of grey. You sit on the edge of the ring, the ghost in the machine. You watch the kids, so young, so full of fire, and you see yourself in them. You see the hunger, the desperation, the desperate desire to make something of themselves. You want to tell them to stop. You want to tell them to walk away, to run as far as they can from this place, from this life. But you don't. You can't. They wouldn't listen. You didn't listen. Historians still argue whether a boxer's greatest challenge is the one they face in the ring, or the one they face when they try to leave it. You're living the answer now, and you know it's the latter. The fight in the ring is a brief, brutal war, but the fight to live a normal life is a long, grinding war of attrition, a battle against yourself, against your past, against the ghost of a man you used to be. One day, one of the kids, a skinny kid with fire in his eyes, comes over to you. He's shy, nervous, but he asks you a question. "Are you really the ghost?" he asks, his voice a whisper of awe. You just nod. He looks at you, a profound, humbling look of reverence on his face. He asks you for advice. You don't have an answer. You're a champion, but you're also a man who is lost, a man who has nowhere to go. You just look at him, at his fire, at his hunger, and you feel a strange mix of pity and a profound, overwhelming sadness. You want to tell him to run, but you can't. All you can do is sit there, a ghost in the gym, a man who won the biggest fight of his life and lost everything else. The end is coming. The final bell is about to ring, and you have to figure out what you're going to do when it does. The decision to quit boxing, once a distant thought, has now become a quiet, unshakable certainty. You're not fighting for money anymore. You're not fighting for fame. You're not fighting for a title. You're fighting for your life, for your sanity, for your soul. And the only way to win this fight is to walk away. You go to Frankie's office, a sleek modern space with a view of the city. He's on the phone, a wide, triumphant smile on his face. He's talking about your next fight, about the big money, about the crowds. He hangs up the phone, and his smile falters when he sees the look on your face. You just look at him. Your eyes a cold, unwavering shade of grey. "I'm done, Frankie," you say, your voice a low, gravelly whisper. "I'm done fighting." He just stares at you, a shocked, bewildered expression on his face. He tries to argue. He tries to tell you about the money, about the fame, about the legacy. You just shake your head. "It's over, Frankie," you say. "The bell has rung." The look on his face is one of a man who has just seen his meal ticket walk out the door. He's angry, of course. He's frustrated. But you don't care. You walk out of his office and you feel a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. You're a free man. You're no longer a commodity, no longer a puppet, no longer a ghost in the machine. You're just a man, and the world is your oyster. You go back to the gym, your sanctuary. Mickey is there, of course. He's always there. You just sit on the stool next to him and you tell him everything. You tell him about Frankie, about the decision, about the profound, overwhelming sense of peace you feel. He doesn't say anything. He just gives you a slow, weary nod. He knows. He knows this is the right choice. He's been waiting for this day for years, ever since he told you his story, ever since he saw the ghost of his opponent in your eyes. He knows that the only way to win this game is to not play it anymore. A mainstream historical fact is that many retired boxers of the era would try their hand at managing or training, a way of staying in the game without actually fighting. You're living that now. You're a teacher, a mentor, a guide. The next few months are a slow, steady journey of healing. Your body's still broken, of course. Your hands still ache, your ribs still throb, and you still feel the ghosts in your blood. But the wounds are different now. They're not the open, bleeding wounds of a fighter. They're the quiet, healing scars of a man who has made peace with his past. You start to work with the kids at the gym. You teach them the things you learned. You teach them how to be smart, how to be a ghost, how to win on their wits, not on their fists. You teach them that the most powerful punch they'll ever throw is the one they don't have to throw. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this era is that some retired boxers would become a kind of spiritual guide, a sage who would use their experiences in the ring to teach young men about life, about grit, about the profound, terrifying power of the human will. You're that man now. You're a champion. But you're also a man who is profoundly, irrevocably broken. But the brokenness is different now. It's not a source of pain. It's a source of wisdom. You're a man who has lived a life, who has climbed a mountain, who has touched the sun, and who has found a way to come back to earth. You're a man who has won the biggest fight of his life and has nothing to show for it but a profound, unshakable sense of peace. You look at the kids in the gym and you see a reflection of yourself. You see the fire in their eyes, the hunger in their bellies, the desperate desire to make something of themselves. You want to tell them to stop, to quit, to walk away. But you don't. You just show them. You show them with your actions, with your wisdom, with your quiet, resolute presence. Historians still argue whether a man's legacy is defined by his successes or his failures. You don't have an answer. You just have the knowledge that you did what you had to do. You fought the good fight, you won the big one, and you walked away when you had to. You're a champion, but you're also a man who is just beginning to live. The final bell is rung. The fight is over. And the rest of your life is just beginning. You're not a hero anymore. You're not a champion anymore. You're just a man. And that, you realize, is a victory more profound than any title, more valuable than any amount of money. The weight of the world is gone now, and you're free. The final bell has rung, but the echo of it, you're beginning to realize, will never truly fade. Your hands, while no longer broken, are a permanent testament to the life you lived. The knuckles are gnarled, the fingers are a little stiff, and a deep, bone-deep ache is a constant companion, especially on cold, rainy days. It's the kind of ache that reminds you of every punch you ever threw and every punch you ever took. Your body is no longer a weapon. It's a museum, a collection of old scars and bruises that tell a story you can't quite forget. You're a man who is living with a ghost, and that ghost is yourself. You spend your days at the gym, a quiet, watchful presence in the corner. You're no longer the star, no longer the champion. You're just a man, a mentor, a guide. The kids at the gym look at you with a kind of reverence that you find both humbling and unsettling. They know your story. They know you were the ghost, the man who won the biggest fight of his life and then walked away. They ask you for advice, they ask you to hold the mitts, and they listen to your words with a quiet, profound attention. You're a teacher now, and you find a strange, quiet sort of peace in it. You're giving back to the game that took so much from you. You're trying to save a new generation of fighters from the same fate you endured. A mainstream historical fact is that many retired boxers from this era found a second career as a trainer, a role that allowed them to pass on their hard-earned knowledge and stay connected to the sport that defined them. You are one of them, a living link to a bygone era of boxing. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some gyms, a retired champion's gloves would be hung from the rafters as a sign of respect, a kind of silent testament to their legacy. The gloves you wore in your last fight are hanging from the rafters of Gleason's gym now, a battered, worn-out pair of leather gloves that have seen 1,000 battles. You look at them sometimes, and you remember the roar of the crowd, the sting of a punch, the profound, overwhelming silence of a man who is all alone at the top of the world. The legacy of your career is a strange, paradoxical thing. You're a champion, but you're not a hero. You're a man who won the biggest fight of his life and then walked away. The newspapers don't talk about you anymore. The crowds don't cheer for you anymore. You're just a ghost, a whisper, a memory. And yet, you feel a profound sense of peace. You did it. You won. And you found a way to do it without becoming a monster, without losing your soul. You found a way to win the biggest fight of your life, and then find a way to live a normal life. You're not a hero. You're just a man who found a way to be free. Historians still argue whether a fighter's legacy is defined by his record or by the man he becomes after he leaves the ring. You're living the answer now, and you know it's the latter. The record is just a number. The legacy is the life you build after the fight, the person you become after the last bell rings. You're a man who is at peace with his past. You're a man who found a way to live with the ghosts of the ring. You're a man who found a way to be a champion without having to be a killer. The life you live now, the quiet, humble life of a teacher, is more valuable than any title, more profound than any fame, more precious than any amount of money. Your hands still ache, of course. The ghosts are still there, in your blood, in your bones, in every step you take. But they're not a source of pain anymore. They're a source of wisdom. They're a reminder of the man you were and the man you've become. You're a champion, but you're also a man who is just beginning to live. You're a man who found a way to win the biggest fight of his life and then found a way to live a normal life. The journey is over. The fight is won, and you're at peace. And so, as the final echo of the last bell fades, you find yourself at the end of a long, bruising journey. The memories of the ring, of the crowds, and of the men you fought, they're not gone, but they've softened, like old photographs in a dusty album. The sharp edges of pain have dulled into a quiet ache, a part of you now, like a familiar scar. You're not the boy from the alleys, nor are you the champion of the world. You're just a man who lived a life, who faced down his demons and found a quiet corner of the world to call his own. The silence is not empty anymore. It's full of the soft rhythm of your own breathing, the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. You've come a long way from that shivering kid in the back alley, and you've found something more precious than any title, a profound, unshakable peace. Now, as the fan hums in the background, take a moment to breathe, to let the images of the past fade into the night. Your own journey is just beginning. Let the quiet of the night wrap around you, a gentle blanket of peace.